Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm here with Nancy Duarte. Nancy, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
So Nancy, you're an expert in communications. You've been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. I could just keep going on and on and on. But you've also written 5 best-selling and award-winning books. You've received numerous awards. You're the principal and CEO of your design firm, Duarte Inc. I think about 30 years now. Is that right?
31.
31. Wow. Congratulations.
And probably older than you, isn't it?
Yes, my skin cream is working because you're not even close, but I really appreciate that. My wife would go like, she's totally off. What is she thinking, Nancy? But thank you. I'm trying to work on my appearance. But you're also known as one of the top communications professionals in the world. And I want to extract as much as we can from you, because I think there's a lot that people can learn. What we're doing every single day as consultants and building consulting businesses is connected to communication. So let's just start off and have you share a little bit about how did you get into this world of communication and telling stories through design?
Yeah, that's a great question. We obviously started a long time ago, and we actually got niched into presentations, partly by accident, partly on purpose. And so if you think about the power of a presentation, sometimes they float around and people read them. Other times you stand and deliver them, but they tended to be this visual vehicle to get your idea understood. And so we would, listen to what was being said. Sometimes we would live storyboard it, and sometimes we're like, wow, what they're saying isn't that great. And we started to coach them in what to say. We started to write in stories. So I went on about a 4-year journey studying stories, about 3.5 years. And I dug deep into storytelling, dug deep into story patterns, because I knew that people who, I have a book, it's actually called 100 Greatest Speeches of All Time. And I looked at all 100 speeches, and I knew there was a rhythm and a cadence to the ones where they were really, really good at it. And I found a story pattern that they used. And so it's just been fun. I really feel that, and actually the data, oddly now, is showing that communication skills are the biggest skill gap in the world, to the tune of millions and millions of people are lacking communication skills to fill jobs right now.
Where did this come from? Like, did you have this passion for design and storytelling before you even started Duarte? Take us back to what were you doing before you started your own business?
Well, I was 18 and I got married, and then we started the business. I was a declared math major. I never finished college, but Cisco Systems, my client, they paid for me to get an MBA from UCLA because they counted all my bodies of work as my undergrad, which is great. So what happened is my 1 year of college that I got a C- in speech communications and a D in English. And so I was like, wow, I just quit, right? And but I was also kind of a declared math major. That's why so much of my work is based in math and in data. And I never finished. I don't know. Someone on Wikipedia keeps saying I got a degree in math. I don't know who that person is. And then, but I always also did visuals. So as a little kid, I didn't really play with dolls. I played with, I got an old abandoned desk and I put it in my bedroom and I would trace coloring books. So I loved visuals, I loved data, and I loved public speaking, I think at a pretty young age. So I would draw these things from coloring books and I would file them alphabetically in the drawer of my desk. And that's how I played as a kid. And so that's why work to me is just like how I used to play as a kid. And so all those things have converged, and I feel very lucky and very blessed to kind of be able to do what I was born to do, because I didn't follow the traditional path to get here.
Right. So talk to us a little bit more about this idea of communication. You just mentioned it's hugely kind of undervalued or lacks real focus. Your most recent book here, Data Story, right, which we'll make sure people can learn more about, talks a lot about how people can use data, but it needs to be connected to stories to really kind of get the point across. Consultants are in the business of telling stories, of having conversations, of giving presentations. What advice would you have for consultants who want to be able to convey their information or their story or their opinion and what they see in a more exciting way, but also in a way that actually gets people to take action?
Yeah, I love that. I think sometimes there's the gap, I think, between, say, a consultant and just a data analyst, you could say, is that the consultant forms a point of view about the data. And forming a point of view is really important. And a point of view when you frame the point of view as a big idea, there's actually two components to it. There is, what is your point of view about the data, and what's at stake if we do or do not do something about it? Because it's really not just digging through the data for the data's sake. So when you dig through data, one of two things happens. It's pretty binary. I would love for someone to challenge me, because I would love to know if there's more things, but you dig into the data and one of two things happens. You find a problem or you find an opportunity. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
And so then you have a communication problem. So you have a problem or an opportunity. You have a communication problem at that point, because you need to try to convince people, I found this opportunity, we need to do something about it. Or I found this problem, we need to get people to do something about it. So that's why it's a lot about using data to find it, and then what do you do to take action? There were a couple things I did in there that I loved. I'm so privileged. I have about 120 employees, 140 people total that we write, produce, and help the highest performing brands in the world. So what I did is I lifted from about 8 of the highest performing brands in the world, just their data slides, just the slides where they spoke to data, just the slides where they wrote about data. And I pulled out all the parts of speech, noun, verb, adverb, all these. And I found the most powerful insights came from what verbs the highest performing brands chose to use in association with their data.
Could you give an example of that for everyone listening?
Yeah. So the verbs that were associated, I collected them all and then formed them into a pattern. And so there's two kinds of verbs. There's performance verbs and process verbs. And there's a whole page, a whole spread in the book where I listed as many as as would fit on a page. A performance verb is a verb that an executive may be measured on. It can actually have KPIs associated with it. And it's really around how the organization performs. And then what you tuck under that are process verbs. So there's multiple processes you may have to do to reach the performance verb, but there's process verbs and performance verbs. So you might go and get a piece of data, and it could just answer a process question like, oh, should I do this? Let me get this one statistic, and it tells me, yeah, I probably should do that. And that's a process verb. When it's a strategic verb, a lot of times you've had to go to multiple data sources. You've had to go and have lots of conversations, become your own skeptic. Really, it's a big decision that you just don't make lightly. And those were more the performance verbs that were associated with the data.
Got it.
It was interesting.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you essentially analyzed a whole bunch of successful, these are thought to be successful because they're from well-established brands and companies that we would all know, and then identified the common verbs that they're using or the commonalities in those presentations.
Exactly.
And are there specific words that stand out to you that were more common than others? That just tend to be.
What was super interesting was we looked at, there's another online book called Slide Docs. I don't know if the consultants know about that, but that's where you pile a bunch of words onto your slides and you distribute them and circulate them. So a lot of times a consultant isn't actually making a slideshow. They're making what we would call a slide doc, right? You put a lot of charts, a lot of data. So the energy and words that were put into the slide docs was different than what would be in a stand and deliver in more influential or persuasive presentation.
Right.
So the verbs, what was interesting is we, now, after I figured this out as a firm, because we do this on behalf of others, we're spending more time thinking about what really is the verb that we're asking people to do because of the findings in this book.
Yeah. And I'm really asking because it sounds, I think, to someone just listening or watching to this, it's a bit abstract. Like we're talking about verbs and how they can actually make a real difference in your presentation. So I want to try and bring this thing a little bit more concrete and tangible for people so they can really benefit from it.
Yeah. So some of the verbs you're asking them to continue doing something. Some of the verbs you're asking them to stop, and some of the verbs you're asking them to actually change. And most of the verbs are around change. It's very few that are asking people to stop doing something. Okay. Continue, literally, when it's like, well, what are all the words around that? Because we found the word continue, and we're like, well, that's weird. We never could find any other verb besides the word continue to support that. But I'm actually turning to the page because I don't want to misrepresent anything. But I can't find it. Just a second.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning that, the other thing that you just touched on that I think is really important is that when you're giving, when you're in conversation with a buyer, it's not just the data that you want to talk about. It's not just the findings or what you've found, but it's really also about the cost of inaction if they stay where they are, or the benefit that they get by taking that action. Can you just talk a little bit more about like what you mean with that, or maybe a recent example or something that kind of stands out to you as how that's really important for people to use?
Yeah, in the book, I call that a big idea, the data point of view. And I have some examples in there. It might be something like, usually it's in the form of, I found this in the data, therefore we need to blah. So anytime you answer the question, therefore we need to, normally you're using a verb to say. So you'd say, we need to do blah. If we don't do it, blah could happen. Or if we do it, blah could happen. And it could be good stakes or bad stakes, because it could be like a cautionary thing, or it could be super motivating. Like, and then therefore we all get bonuses at the end or whatever, right? So it just depends on either what's going to work with your audience, or more importantly, what's the right thing to do for the data, you know, how to make it.
Because I think a lot of consultants are in situations where they, even though they know what should be done, they hesitate to be direct with the client because they're concerned about stepping on their toes, right? Or saying something that might offend someone that's put a lot of effort and energy into something, or it's their baby. What are your experiences with that?
With forming a point of view about the data?
Yeah, point of view, and even communicating directly to the buyer, even though you know it might not be what they want to hear.
Yeah, I think that some people would say, "Oh, the data speaks for itself," but really, somebody has to form a perspective around it, because technically, artificial intelligence can hit data or read data and tee up an observation from the data.
Right.
Well, in this case, somebody has to form a point of view about it. And I'll give you an example. You wanted an example of a point of view.
Yeah.
So usually your point of view about the data is, it's the kind of the future data that you're looking for. So you're making a claim that if we do this action, our data could transform in the future, right? So here's a dorky little example. Changing the shopping cart experience and our shipping policies could increase sales by 40%. So there's an action, changing the cart and our shipping policies. And then what could happen, what's at stake is 40% increase in sales. So it's just super tight. It's just one sentence. It's not super complex, but doing it as a tight lockup like that, where it's like, here's my point of view, here's the payoff, or here's my point of view, and here's the problem. It just makes it really clear what is one thing.
I think you're hitting on such an important kind of component or piece. I see this a lot with the consultants that we coach in our program, where they'll talk a lot about like the inputs, the things that they're going to do, right? Or the deliverables, but they don't focus much on the outcomes or the results or what's at stake. And so that 40% is really what's going to drive the buyer, the client, or the internal stakeholder to take action. You're known for creating beautiful designs and charts and graphics and presentations. What do you do at Duarte internally to actually what do your presentations look like when you're going to plan a client? Are you using PowerPoint? Are you using slide decks, or do you just go and talk? What is your sales kind of presentation or that process look like internally?
Yeah, it's a good question. So sometimes we're the cobbler's kids with no shoes, right? We're like, oh my God, we're just doing the work. And when someone wants to see our work, we have to scramble sometimes. But what's interesting is we use Keynote and PowerPoint, and what we make is so cinematic. Like you could sit in the audience and you would think it's video, and it's all in PowerPoint. Beautiful. I mean, spinny, swooshy. I mean, just stuff that people don't know you can do. And maybe it takes us 20 steps to get it to do that, but we get it to be really beautiful. Now that's for a really big staged event where it's CES or Mobile World Congress or Davos or where it's really formal TED. When it's sitting in a meeting one-on-one and you're reviewing something together, that's just not appropriate, right? So we do a lot of slide docs where we'll create templates for people. we'll create big templates where 100,000 employees are working through a presentation or a PowerPoint thing.
But you don't use those as part of your sales process when you're sitting with a buyer, or you would as part of the sales
sometimes
process. Okay.
Yeah. So at different phases. So if they need to understand an arc and a narrative, so sometimes we'll make that, like if the sales call is 30 minutes, it would break down with like, here's 3 minutes of a somewhat formal presentation. Sometimes we use slides, sometimes we don't. We try to always have some sort of a grounding device, a visual, like that architecturally shows the hierarchies of things or the matrix of what are your choices and why you choose them, stuff like that. But we don't like load up the Zoom camera and have slides up all the time, because it's really a lot about eye contact. It's a lot about making you feel heard. It's a lot about asking questions. So our sales calls are really more like designed conversations than they are stand and deliver presentations.
Got it. I think, Nancy, the first time I heard your name was when you created that famous kind of presentation and slide for Al Gore. You've probably heard that a lot from people. How did you land him as a client or get involved in that project?
Yeah, so he had joined the board at Apple. So Apple's been our client for 31 years, all 31 years. We've had every year, 31 years of business from them. And when you join a board, you're not allowed to receive goods or services from that organization. So even though Apple's own creative services department wanted to help him, they couldn't.
Right.
And so we've been partners with them forever. So they flipped him over to us, and it was so fun. Like people would be like in the elevator, I go, that Al Gore?
Yeah.
So yeah, he would come, we would help him. I let my team work with him, actually. I stayed away and let them solve it with him. It was kind of fun.
Right.
They had a great time. Flew around in the jet. We're on Oprah and all that stuff. It's so funny.
Did you see did that have a big impact on your business and leads and coming into you from that?
Well, what's so funny is we didn't tell anyone we did it. Nobody even knew who we were. And then a blogger out of Japan named Gar Reynolds kind of told the world that we were the ones who did it, because he looked in the credits, like, who did it? And I don't know, we just work with so many big time. We just never talked about it really, but it is the first time a slideshow won an Academy Award, right? And so he looked it up and told the world that we did it, and that helped us. So he had about back then when blogs were new, he had like 20,000 followers on his blog or something, and that's how people started to find out about it. Yeah.
So you've had some very well-known clients over the years and continue to. Apple's been with you, as you said, since the start. Yeah. How does a consultancy, a company like yours, at the start land a client like Apple?
Well, the beginning, what's weird is we were kind of like digital upstarts. So we're talking 1988. So we had this terribly ugly apartment with thick yellow carpet. Like it was just like, and we were probably the only people in a 2-mile radius that owned a Mac, because it was that new, right? Yeah. He moved furniture all summer to saved every penny to buy this Mac. And so we, at that time, a lot of the people on your show probably don't know, the way that data was done for charts and for print is you used electrical black tape and an X-Acto knife, and you cut your X and your Y axes. It was all a lot of hand analog stuff. Yeah. And so we called like NASA, Tandem, and Apple at the time, and we're like, hey, we're ready to go, because we were kind of like digital upstarts, oddly, because at that point you couldn't even print from a computer to a printer. I mean, this is olden days. And so that's what I led with. Like I won Apple and Tandem, which is now HP, and NASA all in one afternoon. We just told them that we could do what they're doing by hand digital.
Was that just you picking up the phone and calling them?
Yeah.
And did you have, like, what was that like for you? Were you excited to make those calls, or were you trembling with fear? Like, what was that experience?
You know what? I had come from sales. So my illustrious career began as a in the checking line at Long's Drugs, right? And so I've just slowly worked up, but I made a pretty complicated technical product, and I was in inside sales, and I used to keep asking, put me in outside sales, put me in outside sales. I could kill it. I could run circles around all these dudes.
Nice.
And back then you didn't put women in outside sales. The women were supposed to be manning the booth in Vegas in their little hot pants, right? And I didn't want that. And so I just was I was kind of fearless when it came to sales, and I was selling my husband's illustration skills at first, right? And I could commit that he could illustrate this photorealistically on a computer. And people were like, you're kidding me, show me proof. And then once I could really show them that he could do this, we started winning work like crazy.
Do you have any advice for the man or woman who has a deep expertise? They know inside that they can really help a client, a company, an organization, but they're very fearful of doing what you just did, picking up the
Yeah.
phone and calling people or getting in front of them because all kinds of things are going on in their mind about what could go wrong or how they're going to lose the one opportunity. What would you say to those people? Any advice you might offer?
I think it's less scary when you're passionate about having a problem you're solving, right?
Mm,
So, and that's what I'm kind of coaching my own team here is go and find the problem that you're solving. Like we look up, well, some of my big accounts, we have access to their intranet, but now we look up, did they state in an earnings call what their strategy is? Can we see what kind of core competencies they're trying to build? Can we see what initiatives they're driving forward? And if you have a service or a product or research or data or something that helps them get there faster, that's going
mm,
to open doors. Now, there's all kinds of regulations, your GDPR, and even California is adopting.
sure.
So starting with an email doesn't necessarily work anymore. And I think
Hmm.
a letters get open. Like I do open letters addressed to me, like,
Yeah.
or whatever. I mean, there's just ways to really stand out today. And I think tying it to one of their strategic initiatives or tying it to a news article you read where
Yeah.
the customer or the brand is experiencing incredible pain around this. And the minute your solution solves that pain, your stance isn't one of, oh my God, I'm terrified I'm going to be rejected. Your stance is more like, I'm like a EMT. I'm going to solve your emergent. I'm a firefighter, right? I'm helping solve and
Yeah.
I'm saving mankind by proposing that you adopt this solution I'm proposing. But it's scary. I mean, being rejected, nobody likes being rejected. A full day of rejection is never fun. But if you hit a nerve, that you don't get rejected nearly as much.
So you had that early success, right? You must have. What did you do that afternoon when you landed those clients? Like, was that a big celebration, or what? Do you remember what you did that day?
It was. We had so much fun back then. It's just my husband and myself. So I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't say on your show what all we did when we had big
Oh,
successes.
got you.
but
Okay.
but you know, one time it was so fun because we did. I was just talking about this. I bumped into a guy who used to be at this company called Supermac, and they made big monitors, which was a big deal, and color monitors, big deal. And we did their initial public offering, you know,
Mm,
and back then we did some on the computer, but we also sometimes had to make 35 millimeter slides and stuff. And anyway, I bumped into them and we were laughing because we charged $15 an hour working from home. We worked so hard. I mean, we must have worked 10 weeks on this IPO, and
yeah.
at $15 an hour, I think my bill was $5,000 or something crazy dumb. And I remember the CMO at the time was like, here's an extra $2,000. Like, we were just like, what? People do
Yeah.
that today? And I'm sure we went out to dinner for that. It's
Right.
just so different. And I think because, you know, we didn't have the qualifications. Like, we didn't have the qualifications. I read everything. I made sure I went cover to cover on HBR, cover to cover on Strategy Plus Business, read every best-selling business book out ever, all of it, all of it. So when I wasn't working, man, I was devouring content. So when I showed up in that room, I knew more. I was more on top of it because I wanted it more, right? I was like a poser. I felt like a poser if I didn't show up and wasn't extra smart.
Where's that drive come from? Because I mean, to me, that's a clear
That's
indication
fair.
of real success, right? You are hungry for it. You're willing to put in the work. These days, so many people are looking for the shortcut. They don't want to think about having to read through an annual report or something else because that takes time. They want to blast out a bunch of messages on
Yeah.
LinkedIn or otherwise and just hope that somehow it's going to magically, build a relationship. But it takes more work. So where did that come
Yeah.
from for like inside of you?
Maybe it was, I think when I dropped out of college, it created a hole in my heart, right? I was like,
Mm,
oh, wow, that's a real void. And I didn't, and today, in those days, it was hard to be successful without a degree. I got to say, I only started to talk about that about the last 8 years because when you show up smart, everyone assumed I had an MBA. Like I was
right.
showing up, I knew everything, I knew every
Yeah.
trend, and this was pre-internet even. So I think it comes from that. I think it comes from being raised in poverty too, a little bit. Like, I don't want that for my family. I knew the opposite of what I wanted. That was a motivator. My mom was actually bipolar too,
Mm.
bipolar, narcissistic, and had borderline personality disorder. And so I didn't have empathy modeled by her. Like when you're growing up, there's tons of research. And so my body of work is a quest for empathy. I mean, I think I have some, but I've had to work really hard to become excellent at empathy. And so all my work has its roots in empathy, and story is the gateway drug to empathy. It's what, so you use story because it opens up an empathetic kind of attachment.
Yeah.
So I think it was just this perfect cocktail of a void, and then me wanting to make sure that void was full.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you've gone from just you and your husband to 140 or so employees. What have you seen? Like, did you experience any big shifts at certain stages of like numbers of employees or revenue that you remember as being, very different? Like, we got to this level and now we have to change certain things significantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's like a couple of milestones. I remember we were at 36 people, and I was still the central hub. We would pick up projects. I would read them. I would sketch out the slides. I would figure out the words that would need to be on the slides. And I would leave a little pile on everyone's desk chair. They would come in the next morning, right? And I was just working 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I got one REM cycle of sleep, 1 4-hour cycle of sleep while I was raising my kids and building the business. So it wasn't easy. And I wasn't showing up as my best self all the time. Because I just wanted to get through things fast and not well. So I remember I hired a general manager and I said, I don't know what I need. Just observe me for 2 weeks and start hiring stuff off of me. Just hire roles, make job descriptions and figure it out and post it, because I didn't even have time to do that. So he observed me. The first one he wanted to hire was a conceptual illustrator, conceptor, we called it. And that was drawing and leaving things on chairs. And I loved doing that. But so I got the job description from him, and I remember reading it. And I remember thinking, if there's someone else that fills this job, I'm going to want to be all involved. I'm going to be all up in their business, And so I remember taking the job description home, and I mourned the loss of that position. It was dead to me. I had to make sure it was dead to me so that whoever chose to fill the position would do it very differently than I did. And I had to make sure that was okay. And so I remember there was these moments when I went from the actual journeyman or the actual craftsman to being the manager of the work. That's E-Myth is a great book
Michael
about
Gerber.
that, right? Start to let go. And so I had to work hard to not be the hub. I had to make a leadership team that held the hub together, that it wasn't a single personality or person that's at the hub.
So you took it to 36. Were there any big kind of, levels before you got to 36 employees that you remember, like going from 2 to even 3 or to 10?
There was a moment where everyone came to the house, right? So Mark and I started in the house, and then next thing you know, our next employee. So we had 5 people coming to the house. Well, it was Mark and myself and 4 people, so a total of 6.
Right.
And I remember I would be in the kitchen trying to cook dinner, and they'd be like, what's for dinner? They'd be sniffing around and so for a long time, we just had a huge family every night for dinner. And I remember there was a moment where we worked on a Big Apple project on campus, and I was on campus for about 3 weeks, and I packed up my briefcase at the time because we used to have those. I packed up my briefcase. I'm like, I'm going home. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've not said that. I've worked it from home and lived at home, but I'm leaving work and going home. And I'd not had that feeling in about 6 years. And so that weekend, my husband and I were at Starbucks, and there was like this little retail above Starbucks. And we walked up there, and there was this little office, and I'm like, let's do it. And it was also scary. So that was, I would say, that move took us the most faith, because we moved out of our home. We're committing to a 5-year lease. We committed to a new employee in the same week. And for us, that was the biggest leap of financial faith we took. So I think it's your first leap of financial faith, that thing that scares you the most. And then it was organizational problems after that.
What got you through it? Like, what actually ultimately gave you the faith to lock in that lease, to hire that employee?
Yeah, because data doesn't show you that kind of stuff. Your data would show you, oh, it's going to be too tight, or maybe you shouldn't make this decision. And I think that's where intuition plays a really, really big role. It's just this thing. It's like, what? Number one, I loved that feeling so much of being able to leave work and go home. Um, I and we were like, everyone was in my freaking living room every day. My whole living room had desks, and I mean, it wasn't a living room, but I just knew that I knew that it was going to work out. I don't know how to explain it, because if you projected the math, it would have been maybe too tight for a lot of people to make that leap. But we're talking about, like, this one time, I had an executive from Apple over. One time, he sat down on the couch, and my son's baby bottle like squirted his leg. He stood up, and just milk went down his leg. Another time, I'm working with this speechwriter for the CEO at the time. This is pre Steve Jobs, and my daughter walks up, and it's like right between our faces, like I'm talking to him, he's talking to my daughter, pops up, it's like, God, Mom, your breath stinks, right there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe we should move out of the house, you know? So yeah, probably wasn't a great.
Well, and that also goes to show that if you're putting out a good product and you're being genuine and a human, pretty bad things that the mind thinks that are bad don't actually get you to lose a client. You can still survive. You can still keep building, right?
They loved us. Yeah.
They
loved us. Yeah.
What do you think made them love you? Like, was it just you're doing great work? Was it your relationship with them?
It's our service. So we, because Mark and I, we both knew that we were not graphic designers. And my husband, like me, is a lifelong learner. So went to the library. This is a whole new tool, right? And the cool thing, there was about a 3-year window. People don't realize that the graphic design community thought the Macintosh was a joke. They didn't adopt it. They thought it was stupid. And we just slipped right in right then.
Nice.
Went to the library, found every book he could on graphic design, typesetting, typography, everything. Early on, Adobe was a client, and they made sure we knew what ligatures were. Like, they made us, it's kind of nice. They helped form us. And so, I can't remember what your question was.
Well, no, it's all right. I was going to ask you though, like, at what point in this transition did you offload sales and marketing? When did you give that to someone else?
You know what?
Or are you still holding it?
No, you know what's funny is we didn't sales and market at all. And so I only built a marketing team about 4 years ago, because word of mouth. So when you're a service business, it's word of mouth. So, if your business starts to drop, either your pricing's wrong, people didn't feel they got what was worth the value. And so I never had to market the service firm. For the training business, so the books help. Like, I guess I don't think it's marketing. I think this is a generous way to help the world communicate, right? So for $20, $30 or whatever, so we do it to be generous, and in return, the phone just rings like crazy. But I don't sell. So we just now are building a proper sales force, but more for the training side than the service side. And most of our marketing helps the training side versus the service business.
Got it. So you've written, I think, 5 books in this area for the consultants, for the professional services, business owners. Which of your books would you suggest would be the best one for them to start with?
Kind of depends on what kind of consulting, right? Because if it's heavy data, I would say Data Story. Slide Docs is online. That's another one. If they're codifying their material into a document that they pass, and the client, and it feels to the client like they paid. A lot of people, they hire a consultant, and the consultant puts a bunch of great information in a PowerPoint. So if that's the kind of consultancy, I would say Slide Docs, because up there are some beautiful templates where you just have to swap out some colors and stick your logo, and they're stunning. They look like brochures. And so that's, I would say, one of those. Resonate is about influence. And yet that in a verbal dialogue, if you're going to actually present, Resonate's also very, very good.
Final question for you. As the CEO of your company, 120, 140 or so people right now, we know you're not doing sales, you're not doing marketing. So what are you doing? What does your day-to-day look like right now?
Oh my God. So when I'm writing a book, my morning starts about 5, and 5 to noon I write, because my creative energy is then. And then in the afternoons I take meetings. Right now I'm having to spend a lot of time doing some contract review. We're getting big licensing deals, so it's new energy and new different kinds of things going on. So and then there's all kinds of like security compliance, like really interesting things happening right now in the IT space that the owner of the business, it's risk, like things show up on your risk. And so none of those things really energize me. And then of course I have, about 5 direct reports, and we came up with a vision this year. So I spend time on vision. I spend time on accountability to the vision, making sure that we're aligned. It took about 18 months, but I have a really, really healthy executive team and everyone. And we just put in a performance culture, which my partner, my VP of HR, my God, what a gem. And so put in a performance culture, got rid of underperformers kinds of thing. That was just work. That's just rolling up your sleeves and stuff. So yeah, doing lots of kind of, all the stuff that I neglect when I'm on book deadline.
Right.
I have to jump back in, and we're putting in big new, my finance gal calls it our big girl system, where we're going to put in a great big SaaS brain so we could scale. So we're planning to be about 4 times bigger than we are within 3 years. And so I'm trying to think through, like, what's the right way of working, and what do we really need for data? I don't want to put data in there for data's sake, right?
Yeah.
So just, man,
that's
all
exciting.
kinds of stuff.
Yeah, exciting.
All kinds of stuff.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Nancy, I want to thank you for coming on, sharing some of your lessons learned along the way and experiences.
You've been fun.
Yeah. So, the best place for people to go to learn more about you and your work, where should it be?
Yeah, so Duarte.com is and then I'm on Twitter at Duarte or at Nancy Duarte, and I do connect anyone who connects me on LinkedIn. And I do have a Facebook page that's kind of fading a bit because I'm not up there much, but I do reply to everybody.
Wonderful. Well, Nancy, again, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's fun.